Violet wins Twilight Sparkle, A True Love by Swedish dub. Violet Wins was born in Manhattan. He was born to two musicians. All he wanted in his life was to spread happiness to others. And already as a colt, he got lessons by his own parents to make music. And they was very hopeful that he could one day become a great musician. At age 11, he had become a very good musician, which they never expected. He had already won a few prizes in talent show, and he has even also been offered a contract to make music. But Violet Wins declined the offer, and he said why. He doesn't want to make that kind of music. He wants to make it free to others, so they don't have to pay. When he was about 20 years old, he decided to leave Manhattan to travel around to spread his happiness to others. And that he did. Over the next 3 years, he traveled from Manhattan to Tottenham, to Crystal Empire, to Saudi Arabia, which is his state, for a few months. Then he traveled further to Griffinstone, and even to Dragon's Land, but the Dragons didn't appreciate it, didn't like much music, so then he left much sooner than you think. Then he traveled to Baltimore, and even to Ponyville. But for most time he traveled around. He didn't know much to do except traveling around in music. Most of the time he didn't know much about his future. He just wanted to make happy to others by his music. But at the same time, there was something that he missed the most in his life. That is to share his life with somebody. He hasn't dated much since he left Manhattan. He used to have a girlfriend in Manhattan, but she broke up with him since when he told her that he declined the offer to become a great musician from that. She wanted him to take back the offer, but he declined. He didn't want to make that kind of music. And she didn't want to, and also, then before then, he even proposed to her. But she didn't say yes or no. She said she wanted to have some time to think about it. And just after this decline of this offer, on his opportunity to become a great musician from a record. But since he told her that he declined it, and even he got a second offer, but even more, a raise of the money he could earn. But he declined it as well. Because the first time he was offered about 10,000 bits for it. But the next offer he was offered about 50,000 bits. But he declined it also. And he told his parents about the reason. And they appreciated that he was honest. And they also didn't want to make that kind of money for it. Even there are a lot of money to pay for a lot of things. But he didn't want to make money so much about music. He wanted it to be free to others that they can enjoy it. But his girlfriend or fiancée, what it's called, then told him that she didn't want to marry him because she think that he was selfish. That she wanted to take the offer because since they were going to be married, and she wanted to have a big wedding, and even probably one day to have a bigger house and sort of a big family. And that means that with that amount of money from the second offer could help. But he declined that he wanted that money. And he said he could still earn money from hard work. But she then said that she wanted to be married and just left him. From that moment, he decided not to stay in Manhattan. Even if he went back home for a few times from time to time, just to visit his parents. And even those money he earned from hard work, he sent it often then back to his parents. But he didn't send all of it. He sent maybe half of the money he earned and half he kept to paying for food or hotels or where he stayed. For most of the time, he didn't spend much of his money. And one day, during winter, he was getting cold from much traveling around and spending much time alone in the wild in self-made shelters. He didn't have enough money to pay for a room in a local hotel or something, and there was not much farms around which he could stay overnight. And just doing that, he started to get cold and even he got to get worse. Because one morning he woke up with a lot of heavy coffee. He could barely breathe. He decided to leave the forest and probably go into town to try to find some way to get some medicine, even if he didn't have much money for it, or any. But even he went so far, just outside the forest, he collapsed right on the ground. And it started to snow. And it was not until less than an hour later when a pony was flying above the forest, saw him on the ground. "Spike, we need to save him, look!" It was Twilight. She was out and flying from over the forest nearby just before. She needed some fresh air, and she saw that the pony was lying on the ground. So they grabbed him and bring him back to the castle, which it wasn't that far. It was probably like 5 minutes away from the forest. And it was not every forest, which many people first heard about is that where he found. It took at least 3 days before he woke up. But when he woke up, he looked around in the room. He wondered, where am I? And how did I end up here? He decided to leave the room, but he was still weak from the flu which he had. He could barely walk. When he opened the room door and saw a long corridor with many rooms on it, he wondered which direction he would go, to right or left. But he decided to go right. Before he had maybe walked 10 steps before he fell to the ground. He tried to get up, but he was so tired and so weak. But at the moment, Spike appeared around the corner. "Hey, what are you doing up? You shouldn't be in bed," said Spike. I'm so..." But then he collapsed again, lost consciousness. Spike managed to pull him back to bed, even he was much heavier than Spike himself. Spike told Twilight that this pony had left his room and collapsed in the corridor. Twilight was worried about if the flu was getting worse. So she sent Spike to Sakura to bring some medicine for him. Some other herbs, tea, or anything that could help. And later Spike came back with some other medicine which he could use. But it took at least another week before Violet Winstead became well enough to leave the room without any feeling much of a week. But Twilight offered him to stay in the castle over the winter. And first he didn't want to stay there, he didn't want to be a burden for her. But Twilight said, "No, you won't be a burden, you have plenty of room here, and you can stay as long as you want." So Violet Winstead stayed at the castle over the entire winter. And over for the next few months that he stayed there, until spring, he often played music for Twilight, Spike, and her friends. And they often said he has a very great talent. Then he explained what he told himself, what he's from, what his name was, and then he told him about this great offer. And to be honest, he was so surprised to see that Rarity said he thought that she would say, "You're crazy. How could you not taken that offer?" But he said in return, to the opposite, she said, "Well, you at least be honest that no one should be offered, anybody should be offered so much money they decided to play music for fun, for free. That is very generous." Even Twilight said, "Even you don't earn that much money, even if those money that you earn is not much, try to keep you up, even if you don't have that much to keep for the rest of your life." Violet winced, then had to explain to Twilight and her friends why the reason. He felt that the music should be shared freely to others, not have to be paid for to listen on the records or anything. Even he played the music on stage or on the street just to earn the money he thinks is worth earn on his own. And his new friends explained that to him that at least that he's honest about to earn the right way to make his own way, not have to earn from records. And during this time during winter, Twilight had became somehow feeling affection for Violet Wings. And she first thought, this is just some sort of strong feelings, but it will never go that far. And she often said to herself, those feelings will go away soon. But instead, it didn't. Those feelings for Violet Winds remained in higher winter, even to spring. Violet Winds had prepared to leave Ponyville around spring to travel back on his feet. But when spring came, he didn't leave. There were only a few reasons why he didn't leave Ponyville at spring. One of them was that he actually liked Ponyville and reminds him at home, and also reminds him the place he want to stay. Another one of the reasons is that he also felt affection to Twilight. He even told that to Spike and Rainbow, to Rarity, all her new friends. And they all said that they should at least wait to say that to Twilight when at the moment, when he felt it was right. And during one day during the spring, Twilight and Violet Wing was out for a walk to town, talking about what was going to happen next during the next few months. But then he told her that he loved her. And he was prepared for saying that. He said, "I'm honored that you feel like that, but I'm sorry, no, I'm not the same way." But Twilight said back that she loved him. So the question is then, what will they go for now? Violet Winds actually asked Twilight if she would like to go out with him already the same evening. And Twilight said, "Yes, I would like that." And so they did went out that same evening. And they went to this local restaurant that had just opened. And they had these new dishes from both Saudi Arabia and Greyfieldstone and Crystal Empire and some of the local dishes as well. And Violet Winds told Twilight a little bit more about his time in Saudi Arabia and Greyfieldstone. And she just sit there, listen carefully to him was telling her. Because most of the things that he told her, she hasn't read about it. especially when Griffinstone, that is a place she hasn't been to it. And much of the time they had spent together, she just loved him more and more. And for the next few months that after, they announced to their friends something big going to happen. They told everyone, including their families and their friends, that Twilight was pregnant. And they all was very much shocked about this news, that Twilight is going to be a mother soon. And at the same time, when she found out that she was pregnant, Violet Wins had proposed to her, and she said yes, and immediately. And as both news at the same time as was the first much shock for both of their parents and their friends. But instead of telling them not to be married, just end it, but instead they were just happy. Especially Twilight's mother, she was much filled with joy, and her brother, he was so much joyful that he started crying, he couldn't stop. And Cadence, of all poets that she knows most, she was just so excited for her sister-in-law to be married soon, and even to be a mother. She explained to Twilight that she was telling her some of her experience to be a mother and a wife, and which Twilight thanks for all their experience and knowledge that she can telling her. And a few months later, the wedding was on. And Twilight was just so happy about this big day. It felt like it was a dream that come true. And afterwards, they celebrated their honeymoon at Las Pegasus for the next 3 weeks. And just only a few months after their honeymoon, their daughter was born. And they named the daughter Blossom Wins. And she was actually a unicorn. And she, very much like her mother, loved to read books and even to practice magic. But the most things that she spent with her father was to playing checkers. And surprised to Violet Wins that his own daughter managed to win against him almost every time they played. But he was not angry at her that he beat her almost every time they played checkers. He was just proud that she managed to at least win against an adult. She was only like 5 years old when she started playing checkers. And Twilight, she was much a surprise that her own daughter was so very good at magic, even as just a villain. Included that herself was much study and much magic, even when she was a filly in Canton. Blossom Waynes was much like her own mother, loved to read books, both magic and daring do, but she even got practice on magic from her aunt Rarity and her cousin Veryheart and her grandparents as well. When she was about 5 to 6 years old, she was applied to Celestia's School of Gifted Unicorns, and she was accepted. Even she was one of those students that could be chosen to be Celestia's personal student. Unfortunately, she did at first didn't make it. But Celestia couldn't decide any unicorn to be her personal student at the time. So she applied for the second time, a year later. Then, Blossom wins accept to be Celestia's personal student. And Blossom wins also get her personal studies from Princess Saluna as well, especially in astronomy and even dream magic. ability that could one day enter dreams or even to translate dreams, what they could mean. And both Luna and Celestia showed very much that Blossom Winds had much potential to be a great unicorn or even an alicorn one day. And much as a surprise, when Celestia sent Blossom Winds to the Crystal Empire to make some offer to studies on one of Sombra's old magic books, even there was a potential to be corrupt by the dark magic. But Blossom Winds had this study with her own mother and experience from the teaching from her stories how to prevent to be corrupt. And she managed the test. She read all the magic from Cassandра's books, but did not become corrupted. And from that moment, Celestia and Luna and Cadence, included her own mother, knew that Blossom Winds passed the test to become an alicorn. So when she was about 20 years old, she became an alicorn as herself. Both her parents and grandparents were so much excited about this that their own granddaughter and daughter became an alicorn princess. And just a few months after that, Blossom Winds found her true love in a unicorn stallion in Canton. Just a few months afterwards, they were married as well. And only 2 years after, they'd had their own 2 alicorn daughters as well. And both of them was much strong in magic. And that's how when Celestia found her newest 2 new special alicorn students from Blossom Winds. And even Violet Winds and Twilight was so happy and proud to have 2 alicorn granddaughters and that their daughter from a unicorn transformed into an alicorn. It was more than they could even dream about. And also, it was more than their dreams ever to be married to each other and to have such lovely daughter and 2 granddaughters. And this is the story how Violet Winds and Twilight found a true love and got a big family. The end.